Okay guys, I know it's been too long since we've been on this series, so let's pick it back up. So as you can tell by the title, this one is actually going over 3 books of the Bible. So I'm not going to go as in-depth as I did for the first part. So the books we're going to be looking at are Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers. Okay, so a quick basic rundown of each of the books before we start going a little bit more in depth. So Exodus. Exodus is really divided into 2 halves. The first half is the max exodus from Egypt, where the Israelites are escaping Egyptian slavery. And then the second... Sorry, there's cars. Yeah, I'm at my church again, waiting for someone to get here to unlock the door. I'm not going to talk about why, but if you do want to know, then you can go to our church's Facebook. So, the second half of Exodus is about their time in the wilderness. And they are in the wilderness for 40 years. Leviticus is Moses giving all kinds of laws, mainly cleanliness laws. For example, what food you can and cannot eat. And also, like, you're not allowed to touch dead corpses. And then the last book we're going to be covering today is Numbers. And Numbers is one that I would say is written 6 years before Israel enters the Promised Land. So the first one we're going to be looking at is Exodus. And then we're going to look at it and those halves that I mentioned. Technically, it's closer to a 40-60. I don't know. Math isn't my strongest suit. So it is now Saturday, and if you're wondering why I didn't continue this Wednesday night, it's because by the time I got home, I would have to get ready to go to sleep. And then if you're wondering, well, why didn't you do it Thursday then? I don't even remember what Thursday was. And then if you're trying to ask about yesterday, I felt like if I had just moved my arm incorrectly, I would cough as if I was a volcano. So yeah, I was not feeling good. So the first 40% or so of Exodus is Israel's mass exodus from Egypt and slavery. And when I'm saying that, I am including everything up until about chapter 20. Because that's as far as I can remember, because my brain ain't braining some days. So, Exodus chapters 1, 2, and 3, I would say take place, at least for Exodus 1, it takes place 80 years before everywhere else. And the reason I know that is because Moses is 80 when he leads the Israelites out of Egypt. By the way, sorry, my voice isn't sounding normal. It doesn't feel normal. I'm pretty sure it's because of the sickness, but I'm not sure. So Exodus chapter 2 goes over how Moses kills a Egyptian and is forced to flee from Egypt. And then Exodus chapter 3 is about the Lord telling Moses, hey, you're gonna go free my people. Sound good with you? Oh, it doesn't sound good with you? Well, how about I have your brother Aaron there to help you? And he took every excuse Moses had, and he just threw it out the window and gave him a reason why he can. And then in Exodus chapter 4, it's God telling Moses about what he is to do so that the people of Israel will believe that Moses was sent by God. And then chapters 5 to, I want to say, chapter 11. Here, give me a second to flip there. Hang on a sec. So, it's Monday now, and you may be wondering, wow, it took you from Saturday to Monday to figure out if that's right? The answer is no, and that's because on Saturday, after I got done, I had to help my parents with things. And then Sunday, well, Sunday is the Sabbath, so yeah, there you guys go. So you may be wondering, why did I do it Saturday night? And the answer is because I just couldn't find the time on my own personal time scale. So yeah, chapter 11 is when the plague of the firstborn happens, which is, as you can tell, a pretty serious thing. So now chapters 12 up to, I want to say it's like, I want to say it's up to like chapter 19 is just Israel running away from the Egyptians. And when they're done running away from the Egyptians, they set up camp in the wilderness. And then chapter 20 is one of the most well-known chapters in the Old Testament because it's the Ten Commandments. So the Ten Commandments on their own probably earn a whole video. In fact, my pastor at my church actually started a series on it. And then the youth pastor, who, fun fact, is actually my dad, he had to do the next ones because that fell on our youth Sunday. A thing that I didn't even know existed in some churches until moving to where I am, but hey, I'm not going to spoil you with an ad. So guys, this is a bit of an embarrassing look for me. I thought Exodus was 50 chapters, and as it turns out, I'm off by 10, and it's only 40. Yeah, I don't know how I came to that. I'm just like, brain gone. That's literally what happened. So, with that embarrassing moment out of the way, pretty much all the rest of Exodus is Moses giving out laws and God showing his power to the Israelites because the Israelites decide to make a golden calf and worship it instead of God. And they get punished by staying in the wilderness for 40 years. Yay! Disobedience gets punished. I'm sure every kid knows how that feels. Moving on to Leviticus. Now, I'm just going to say this flat out. Leviticus is the book out of the three that I am the least knowledgeable in. I know, it's crazy considering that I thought Exodus had 10 more chapters. What's wrong with me at some points in my life? But yeah. Silly me. Where was I going? Oh, yeah. So, one thing we need to keep in mind whenever we're reading through Leviticus is this is the Old Testament law, and a lot of these things in Leviticus are outdated, which is something that we very strictly need to point out, because whenever Jesus was brought down to earth and died on the cross, he covered all of our sins of our past, but he also freed us from the chains of the Old Testament law, because the Old Testament law was so strict. You commit one sin, and it depends on what type of sin, but I would say 40% of the sins you commit, if you were to commit them, stoning. Bruh, do you know how many stonings would be happening nowadays if that was enforced in the same way? So a lot of the stuff in Leviticus is about cleanliness and offerings to God. For example, chapters 1 and 2 are about burnt offering and grain offering. Pretty self-explanatory. That is how you are to sacrifice those types of things. Burnt offering would be burning of an animal, and grain offering, I'm sure that's self-explanatory for you guys. And when I say these guys were strict with some of the laws back in the day, I mean strict. I am talking blood was forbidden. Makes sense. Fat. Animal fat was forbidden. Excuse me, what now? Chapter 11 goes over a list of foods that are deemed clean and unclean to eat. And when I say these guys were strict on what you can and cannot eat, there is 47 verses of the Bible devoted to it. So that was taken seriously. And then in chapter 12, purification after childbirth, which is something that, once again, is no longer required and was paid for whenever Jesus went to the cross. Chapter 13 is what made all the lepers terrified, which is regulations about skin disease, which is why lepers were so much of an outcast. Chapter 16 is over the Day of Atonement, which is one of the Jewish, I don't want to say holidays, but I'm going to say it's an important date on the Jewish calendar. And if you don't believe me when I say that this book is talking about all kinds of laws, chapter 19 is devoted to various laws. What can I say? Chapter 20 is the punishment of sin, which, once again, was paid for. However, we should not take that lightly with how it was paid for. Chapter 22 has a segment talking about what is called unacceptable sacrifices. And then chapter 23 has a very interesting segment in verse 3, which is so important that verse 3 is its own main point, the Sabbath. Look, I would say we need to take it seriously, but we don't have to take it as seriously as the Jews do today. Because I heard from somebody that people would literally tape the light in their refrigerator so that way when they open it, the light wouldn't turn on, but instead it was already on because it would be deemed as work. Jesus even confronts this in the New Testament, saying, if one of your cattle or a child is in a well and it's the Sabbath, what are you going to do? Just leave them there? No. There are some things that do need to be done, even if it's on the Sabbath. If it's to save someone's life, like, come on, guys. And I'm going to leave this portion in because apparently the pause button is unhittable. A blasphemer is to be put to death, chapter 24, which is why whenever Jesus was talking in the New Testament, all the Pharisees were like, stone him, stone him, stone him. And we're about getting to the point where I'm going to cut it off. I'm going to try and get one or two more points in, but this video is already getting very long, so one or two more points. Chapter 26 is over rewards for obedience and punishments for disobedience. Which, yeah, I could say that is earned in the book. And then chapter 27 is about redeeming what is the Lord's. I mean, there's all kinds more stuff in Leviticus, but I'm giving you the points that I feel like needed to be hit. And then the final book is Numbers. This is the one that I'd say I'm in neutral knowledge of. Okay? Hang on a second. So guys, there was a verse in Leviticus that I forgot about until getting to Numbers that I really want to talk about real quick. And that is in chapter 19, the various laws portion I talked about. But the verse I skipped was actually verse 28. Do not cut your bodies for the dead or put tattoo marks on yourself. I am the Lord. Okay, this verse is heavily misinterpreted. Whenever the tattoos in question were being brought up, that was referring to whenever pagan nations would cut their wrist, like physically take a knife and cut them. That is what that's referring to, because that was showing that they were sacrificing themselves to a pagan god. Not a modern day tattoo. Don't get me wrong, modern day tattoos can still be sinful. Because if it is something that is satanic, yes, that's sinful. But a lot of modern day tattoos, they aren't. Getting back to Numbers now. Numbers is after, like, all of those laws in Leviticus and Exodus are given. But towards, like, I would put it at about 7 years until Israel enters the Promised Land for the first half of Numbers. So, I'm actually only going to talk about 2 stories just because of how long this video is getting. And I know you guys are getting sick of my voice. Don't lie to me. You know it and I know it. So, at chapter 13, there are 12 spies sent into the land of Canaan by Moses, and 2 of these spies come back talking about this is flowing with milk and honey, and that God has already delivered it into our hands. And then 10 of them, which is the majority, are like, no, we can't go through with this, guys. There's giants there that will devour us. And the people rebel against Moses. So, yeah, 40 years in the wilderness is your choice? Sounds good. Never mind, I'm actually going to talk about 3 passages. The second one is the bronze snake, which Moses made because people were getting bitten by snakes. And all people had to do was look to the staff and the venom would be taken away from them. And later on, I'm not sure which chapter, I'd really have to go and check, which right now I'm not going to cut the video. But the people start worshiping the staff instead of God. So ultimately, the staff gets broken. Or sorry, the bronze snake. My brain's just not working right now. Sorry, guys. I hope that works. So the third one is Balaam's donkey, which is one of the most funny stories in the entire Bible. Now, there is one thing I want to say before we go too much farther. If you actually read this in the original King James Version, there's actually a different word usage that is switched out on donkey. And I'm sure that a lot of people can figure out what that means. And that really shows, like, hey, it's not about the word you use, it's about the intention you use. So the story of Balaam's donkey goes like this. Balaam is invited by a wicked king to be bribed to tell good things about him. And Balaam was going to accept that bribe and give a blessing to that nation instead of the curse that God was going to give them because money. Okay, first of all, that really shows how dangerous money can be. And second of all, God didn't really like that. So he's like, hey, can someone send a angel down there to block his path? So the first time the angel appears, it does not appear to Balaam because Balaam cannot see it, but the donkey can. So the donkey runs into the wall and crushes Balaam's foot. Balaam whacks the donkey and is like, dude, what you doing? Keep going. You just crushed my foot for no reason. And then the second time the angel appears, the donkey runs away into a field. Balaam again is the donkey is like, dude, you keep on your path, man. Like, come on. And then the third time, the donkey is unable to move anywhere, so it just lays down in the middle of the road. Balaam again hits the donkey, and then God, in the most hilarious way possible, gives the donkey the ability to speak, and he's like, hey, Balaam, yo, man, why'd you hit me these 3 times? I've been your greatest friend, man. And then Balaam's like, well, you made me look like a fool here. And then the donkey is like, am I not the same donkey you've ridden for all these years, bud? Have I ever done anything this weird, bud? And then Balaam has this realization moment of, no, you haven't. And then the angel reveals himself to Balaam, and Balaam's like, have you been standing there that whole time? And drop my phone. Rookie mistake, Joseph. Rookie mistake. And so the angel was like, have you not seen me in your path these 3 times? Had your donkey not stopped, I surely would have killed you. So the point of Balaam's story is, 1, to make you laugh, because, like, it's hilarious. Like, how did Balaam not suspect anything when a donkey just started talking? Like, come on, dude. Donkeys can't talk. And then, secondly, we need to pay attention. Yeah. British there for a second. We need to be able to pay attention to people in our lives because sometimes they can see things that we can't. And if the donkey had not seen the angel, Balaam would have just been. So we need to be careful and we need to listen to the advice of others. And that is this video done. By far my longest video ever. I think that the only way that I could have a longer video is if I do the Gospels not in parts, which I probably will put them into separate parts. But yeah, I can't wait for the 1.5 hour upload time. In fact, let's go to the studio now and start creating it. Thank you guys for watching until the end. I hope that this is helpful whenever you're reading through these 3 books. And remember, guys, that Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Genesis have all been covered. Next time, we'll be going over Deuteronomy, which is going to be the shortest video in the series to this point.